The Great Hall of Eris Prime was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. 12 different species sat in their designated sections, each one representing billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. This was the Galactic Council. Today was the annual summit where the future of civilizations was decided. Ambassador Una sat in the human section, which was small compared to the others. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. In galactic terms, they were babies. Many of the other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Some had been doing it for millions. Yun was a patient woman. She had learned that patience was the most important skill in diplomacy. The other species often talked about humans like they were not in the room. They called them primitive. They called them weak. They said humans lived such short lives that they could never truly understand the universe. Una smiled politely at all of this. She had been trained to smile. The session that day was about trade routes and border disputes, normal business. Boring business. The kind of thing that made Una wish she had chosen a different career. But then, something unusual happened. The lights in the Great Hall flickered. A hush fell over the thousands of delegates. At the center of the chamber, a platform began to rise from the floor. On it stood 3 figures made of light and crystal. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They were the Kelvari elders. No one had seen the Kelvari in over 200 years. They were the oldest known species in the galaxy. Their civilization was more than 900,000 years old. They had seen empires rise and fall like waves on an ocean. They had watched species evolve, grow powerful, and then vanish into extinction. They rarely spoke to anyone anymore. They said they had seen everything worth seeing, so when they appeared, everyone listened. The tallest elder moved forward. Its body was made of shifting crystals that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We have watched civilizations rise and fall across cosmic ages," the elder said. "We have seen conquerors who burned worlds. We have seen destroyers who shattered moons. We have seen tyrants who enslaved entire species. But in all our millennia of watching, we have never encountered anything like the humans." The hall went completely silent. Una felt every eye turn toward the small human section. She kept her face calm, but her heart was beating fast. "They are not the strongest species," the elder continued. "They are not the fastest. They do not have natural weapons like claws or fangs. They do not have armor or shells. Their bodies are soft and fragile. They live for less than a century, which is nothing compared to most of you." A few delegates laughed quietly. Una heard someone whisper that humans were barely more than animals. And yet the elder said, and its voice grew colder, "They are the only species we have ever feared." The laughter stopped. "Do not provoke the humans. Do not test them. Do not make them your enemy. For when humans decide that something is worth fighting for, they do not stop. Ever. They will chase you across the galaxy. They will hunt you through generations. They will sacrifice everything they have, including their own lives, to defeat you. This is not a threat. This is a warning. We have seen what they can do. We have seen what they will do. Stay away from them." The elder paused and looked directly at one section of the hall. Una followed its gaze. It was looking at the dominion of Krath. The Krath were a warrior species. They were large, powerful, and covered in natural armor. They had conquered 17 other species over the past 5,000 years. Their empire was built on slavery and war. They feared nothing and no one. Supreme Commander Voth, the leader of the Krath military, stood up from his seat. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and a face full of sharp teeth. He laughed loudly, and it sounded like rocks grinding together. "You expect us to fear these soft little creatures?" Voth said. "Look at them. They have no claws. They have no armor. They die if you look at them too hard." The great Kelvari elders have finally gone senile. Many delegates laughed along with him. The Krath were feared throughout the galaxy. No one wanted to anger them. The elder did not react to the insult. It simply turned its crystal head toward Voth and spoke one last time. "Remember our words, Commander? When the time comes, remember that we warned you." Then the platform lowered and the Kelvari were gone. They had said what they came to say. The hall erupted in conversation. Most species dismissed the warning as the ramblings of an ancient race that had lost touch with reality. The Krath were especially loud in their mockery. Voth declared that he would personally conquer Earth one day, just to prove how weak humans really were. Through all of this, Yuna sat quietly in her seat. A junior diplomat next to her leaned over and whispered, "Should we respond? They are insulting us." Yuna shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "Let them talk. But Ambassador, they are saying terrible things about humanity." Yuna turned to look at the young man. Her smile was still in place, but there was something behind her eyes that made him uncomfortable. Something old and patient and very, very calm. "The elders gave them a gift today," she said. "A warning. A chance to avoid making a terrible mistake. If they choose to ignore it, that is their decision. We will remember." The young diplomat did not understand what she meant. He would understand later. Everyone would understand later. As the session ended and the delegates began to leave, Yuna walked past the Krath section. Voth saw her and grinned with all his teeth. "Little human," he said. "Tell your leaders that the Krath do not fear them. Tell them that one day we will add Earth to our collection." Yuna stopped walking. She looked up at the massive warrior, and she did something that confused him. She bowed politely, like she was thanking him for a compliment. "I will deliver your message, Supreme Commander," she said. "And I hope for your sake that you will remember this moment, because we certainly will." Then she walked away, still smiling. Voth watched her go. For just a moment, he felt something strange. It was cold and uncomfortable, like a shadow passing over his heart. But he shook it off. She was just a human. What could she possibly do to him? He would find out soon enough. 3 months passed after the warning. The galaxy forgot about the Kelvari elders and their strange words. Life went on as it always did. Trade ships moved between worlds. Diplomats argued about borders. And the Dominion of Krath continued to expand its empire, one conquered planet at a time. New Busan was a small human colony on the edge of known space. It was not an important world. There were no great cities or ancient monuments. Just 40,000 people living simple lives on a planet covered in green forests and blue oceans. Farmers grew crops. Fishermen caught fish. Children played in the streets and dreamed of one day traveling to the stars, Captain. Oak was the commander of the Colonial Defense Force. He was a quiet man in his 40s, with gray starting to show in his hair. His garrison had only 200 soldiers. Their job was to protect the colony from pirates and wild animals. They had never fought a real war. On a cold morning in autumn, it changed. The sky turned dark as a massive Krath fleet dropped out of hyperspace above the planet. There were over 100 warships, 10,000 Krath warriors. They came with weapons and chains, ready to add another world to their collection. Supreme Commander Voth himself led the invasion. He wanted to send a message to the galaxy. He wanted to show everyone that the Kelvari warning meant nothing. Humans were weak. And he would prove it by crushing one of their colonies in a single day. The Krath ships blocked all communication signals. No calls for help could reach Earth. New Busan was alone, Captain. Eok received the news while eating breakfast with his soldiers. He put down his spoon, wiped his mouth, and stood up. His face was calm, but everyone in the room could see the fire in his eyes. "How many?" he asked. "Over 100 ships. Maybe 10,000 soldiers." Seok nodded slowly. "And we have 200. Sir, we should surrender. We cannot win this fight." Seok looked at the young soldier who had spoken. Then he looked around the room, at all his men and women. They were scared. They had every right to be scared. But they were also looking at him, waiting for him to tell them what to do. "There are 40,000 people on this planet," Seok said. "Farmers, teachers, children. The Krath take prisoners and turn them into slaves. I have read the reports. I know what they do to the species they conquer. So no, we will not surrender. We will fight, but sir, we will die. Probably Siok agreed. But we will make them pay for every meter of ground. We will make them remember this day. And maybe, just maybe, we will buy enough time for some of our people to escape. The Krath landed their troops that afternoon. They expected the humans to surrender quickly. Every other species had surrendered when facing such overwhelming odds. It was the logical thing to do, but humans were not always logical. The battle for New Busan lasted 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting. 3 days of blood and fire and death. The Krath had better weapons, better armor, and more soldiers. But the humans had something the Krath did not understand. They had stubbornness. A medic named Hannah was shot 3 times during the first day of fighting. She refused to stop working. She dragged wounded soldiers to safety with her own bleeding hands. When she ran out of medical supplies, she tore up her own clothes to make bandages. When a Krath warrior found her hiding spot, she killed him with a surgical knife and took his weapon. Farmers, who had never held a gun in their lives, picked up weapons from fallen soldiers and joined the fight. Old men and women set traps in the forests. Children carried water and ammunition to the defenders. Everyone fought. Everyone resisted. The Krath were confused. This was not how conquered species were supposed to behave. When you were beaten, you were supposed to accept it. You were supposed to bow down and serve your new masters. These humans did not seem to understand this basic truth. Captain Siok led counterattack after counterattack. His soldiers fought like wild animals. When they ran out of bullets, they fought with knives. When they ran out of knives, they fought with rocks and bare hands. The Krath killed 10 of them for every 1 Krath that fell. But the humans kept coming. On the 3rd day, the Krath finally overwhelmed the colony. Captain Siok was captured after being shot 6 times. Hannah was found unconscious in a pile of bodies, still alive despite her wounds. Of the 200 defenders, only 37 survived. Of the 40,000 colonists, 12,000 were dead. The rest were taken as prisoners. Supreme Commander Voth stood in the ruins of the main settlement and looked at the destruction around him. He had won, but the victory felt strange. He had expected to crush the humans in a few hours. Instead, it had taken 3 days and cost him over 800 warriors. 800 Krath. Killed by a force of 200 humans with inferior weapons, Voth pushed away his unease. A victory was a victory. He ordered his communications officer to send a message to Earth. "Your colony belongs to the Dominion now," the message said. "Accept this, and no further action will be taken. Resist, and we will burn every human world we find." Voth waited for the human response. He expected begging. He expected threats. He expected negotiations. What he received was something different. Admiral Tay of the United Human Fleet appeared on screen. He was an older man with a shaved head and eyes like cold steel. He did not look angry. He did not look scared. He looked like a man who had just made a decision. "You remember everything," Admiral Tay said. The message ended. Voth stared at the blank screen. "That was it? 3 words?" He laughed and told his officers that humans were not only weak, but also stupid. They could not even make proper threats, but deep inside, in a place he did not like to visit, Voth felt that cold shadow again. The same one he had felt when Ambassador Yuna smiled at him 3 months ago. Across the galaxy, Kelvari elders received news of what had happened. They did not seem surprised. They simply looked at each other and nodded. "It has begun," the eldest of them said. "May the universe have mercy on the Krath, because humanity will not." On Earth, Admiral Tay called an emergency meeting of every military commander in human space. The room was full of hard faces and harder hearts. They had all seen the images from New Busan. They had all heard the stories of what the Krath did to their prisoners. "We have 2 choices," Admiral Tay said. "We can accept this. We can bow down and hope they leave us alone. Or we can do what humans have always done when someone hurts our family." Paused and looked around the room. "We can make them regret." The vote was unanimous. Humanity was going to war. The galaxy expected humanity to respond immediately. They expected anger. They expected desperate attacks. They expected humans to throw themselves against the Krath in a wave of emotion and die quickly. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. The Krath grew confident. Supreme Commander Voth told everyone that humans were cowards. They had made their little threat and then done nothing. He was already planning his next conquest. Maybe he would take another human colony. It's just for fun. He did not understand what was really happening. On Earth and across every human world, something was stirring. It was quiet and careful and very, very organized. Factories that had been making consumer goods switched to making weapons. Scientists who had been studying medicine started studying ways to destroy Krath armor. Miners who had been digging for minerals started digging for resources to build warships. Admiral Tay and Strategic Director Mingi worked 20 hours a day. They did not eat proper meals. They did not sleep proper nights. They had one goal, and everything else was secondary. But they were not just building an army. They were building something bigger. Humanity. Reached out to the 17 species that had been conquered by the Krath over the centuries. These species were slaves now, forced to work in Krath mines and factories. They had lost hope long ago. They had accepted that they would never be free. The human message was simple. Stand with us, and you will be free again. Most of these species did not believe it at first. How could the humans defeat the Krath? The Krath were stronger, more advanced, more numerous. It was impossible, but the humans did not ask them to fight impossible battles. They asked them to wait. They asked them to prepare. They asked them to remember that freedom was worth fighting for, and slowly, quietly, hope began to spread. While all this was happening, an alien journalist named Ilk traveled to Earth. Ilk was from a neutral species that had stayed out of galactic conflicts for thousands of years. Her job was to observe and report, nothing more. She wanted to understand humans. Everyone in the galaxy was talking about them now. Some said they were brave. Some said they were stupid. Some said they were dangerous. Ilk wanted to find the truth. What she found terrified her. She started by studying human history. It was a long and bloody story. Humans had been fighting each other since before they had written language. Wars over land. Wars over resources. Wars over ideas. Wars over things that seemed completely meaningless to an outside observer. But the most frightening thing was not the violence. It was the persistence. Ilk learned that humans had evolved as something called persistence hunters. On their home planet, they had not been the strongest or fastest animals. They could not catch their prey in a quick chase. So instead they followed their prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Humans did not need to be faster. They just needed to never stop. This mindset had stayed with them through all of history. When humans decided to do something, they did not give up. They pushed forward through pain, through loss, through impossible odds. They would sacrifice everything to reach their goal. Ilk interviewed many humans during her visit. One conversation stayed with her for the rest of her life. It was with an elderly veteran named Wu, who had fought in wars on 3 different planets before retiring to a small farm. Other species fight until it becomes too costly, Wu explained as he poured tea for his guest. Then they negotiate. They make deals. They accept partial victories. This is logical. This is reasonable. He took a sip of his tea and smiled. Humans are not always reasonable. When we fight, we calculate the cost first. We know how many of us will die. We know how much we will lose. And if we decide the cause is worth it, we accept that cost and keep going. We do not fight until we win. We fight until the enemy no longer exists as a threat. There is a difference. Ilk felt cold. You mean you fight until total destruction? Not necessarily, Wu said. We can show mercy. We can be kind. But only after the threat is gone. Only after we are sure it will never come back. Ilk learned about other human concepts that had no equivalent in her language. She learned about spite, the willingness to hurt yourself, just to hurt your enemy more. She learned about grudges, the ability to hold anger for years or even generations. She learned about trauma bonds. It's the way that hurting one human somehow hurt millions of others who had never met them. She visited a place called a memorial. It was a building filled with the names of humans who had died in past wars. Some of the names were hundreds of years old. Humans still came here to remember them. They brought flowers and stood in silence, and sometimes cried for people they had never known. "Why do you do this?" Ilk asked her human guide. "These people died so long ago. Why does it still matter?" The guide looked at her with surprise. "Because we never forget. If we forgot, their sacrifice would mean nothing. As long as we remember, they still matter. And as long as we remember our enemies, we can make sure they never hurt us again." Ilk wrote her report and sent it to the neutral worlds. Her conclusion was simple. The Krath had made a terrible mistake. They see humanity as a weak species that can be easily conquered. They are wrong. Humanity is not weak. They are patient. They are persistent. They are united by bonds that other species cannot understand. And they never, ever forget. The Krath took human prisoners and killed human civilians. They think this gives them leverage. It does not. It gives them a death sentence. The only question now is how long it will take humanity to carry it out. Her report was widely read. Many species did not believe it. Surely the soft, short-lived humans could not be that dangerous. They would learn on a Krath prison world. Captain Seok and the survivors of New Busan waited in their cells. They were beaten and starved and told every day that no one was coming to save them. Seo did not believe the Krath guards. He knew his people. He knew what humanity was capable of. They will come, he told the other prisoners. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs, they will come for us, because that is what humans do. We do not leave our people behind, far away in the darkness of space. The first human warships began to move. The hunt had begun. The war did not begin the way the Krath expected. There was no grand battle. There was no dramatic announcement. There was only silence. And then chaos. Human strike teams appeared without warning at communication relay stations across Krath space. They moved fast and quiet, like shadows in the night. By the time the Krath realized what was happening, 17 relay stations were destroyed. Suddenly, the outer territories of the Dominion could not talk to each other. They could not coordinate. They could not call for help. Then the supply lines started dying. Cargo ships carrying food and fuel disappeared. Convoy after convoy vanished into the darkness of space. Krath patrol ships went looking for the attackers and never came back. Within 2 months, the outer worlds of the Dominion were isolated and starving. Supreme Commander Voth was furious. He ordered his fleets to hunt down the human attackers. But the humans were never where the Krath expected them to be. They struck, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. Cowards. Voth screamed at his commanders. They refused to face us in a real battle. But the humans were not being cowards. They were being smart. They knew they could not match the Krath in a direct fight. The Krath had more ships, more soldiers, more firepower. So the humans fought a different kind of war, while the Krath fleets chased shadows. Something was happening on the conquered worlds. The enslaved species had received the human weapons and human training. Now they were ready to use them. A former slave named Rix led the uprising on his homeworld. He had spent 30 years in Krath chains, watching his people suffer and die. He had given up hope until a human Marine sergeant named Juan found him in the slave camps. Juan was a small woman with short hair and a quick smile. She did not look like a warrior, but she had taught Rix and his people how to fight like humans. You do not need to be stronger than them, Juan had explained. You need to be smarter. You need to be patient. You need to hit them where they do not expect, and then disappear before they can hit back. Rix had learned well. On the day of the uprising, he led 500 former slaves against a Krath garrison of 2,000. They attacked at night from multiple directions, using traps and ambushes that Juan had designed. By morning, the garrison was destroyed, and Rix's homeworld was free for the first time in 200 years. Similar uprisings happened across the Dominion. One by one, the conquered worlds threw off their chains. The Krath tried to send troops to stop them, but their forces were spread too thin. Every time they put down one rebellion, 3 more started somewhere else. Admiral Tay watched the reports come in from his command ship. His face showed no emotion, but inside he felt a grim satisfaction. The plan was working. The Dominion was falling apart, but the war was not over yet. The Krath still had their core worlds. They still had their main fleet, and they still had the prisoners from New Basad. Captain Siok had survived 6 months in a Krath prison. He was thin and scarred, and his body was broken in many places. But his spirit was not broken. Every day, he told the other prisoners to hold on. Every day, he promised them that help was coming. When the human assault ships appeared in the sky above the prison world, Siok allowed himself to smile for the first time in months. The rescue mission was led by a young commander named Duri. She had lost her brother on New Busan. This mission was personal for her, as it was personal for everyone involved. The soldiers who volunteered for this mission knew the risks. Many of them would not come back. They did not care. The battle was fierce and bloody. The Krath guards fought hard to keep their prisoners. They knew that the humans valued their people above almost everything else. They thought they could use the prisoners as shields. They were wrong. Duri and her soldiers cut through the Krath defenses with terrifying efficiency. They did not hesitate. They did not negotiate. They simply killed everyone who stood between them and the prisoners. When the cell doors finally opened, Siok stood up on legs that barely worked and looked at the soldiers who had come for him. "What took you so long?" he asked. Duri laughed and helped him walk out of the cell. "We had some things to arrange first. Now let us get you home." Of the 28,000 prisoners who had survived the camps, all were rescued that day. Not one was left behind. The final battle came 2 months later. Above the Krath homeworld, the human fleet was smaller than the Krath fleet. But it was supported by ships from the 17 liberated species, all of them eager to repay the Dominion for centuries of slavery. Together, they formed the largest combined fleet in galactic history. Admiral Tay sent one last message to Supreme Commander Voth. Surrender unconditionally. Dissolve the Dominion. Release all remaining slaves. Stand trial for your crimes. Do this, and your people will live. Voth's response came quickly. The Krath do not surrender. We would rather die than submit to prey species like you. Admiral Tay nodded slowly. He had expected this answer. "We know," he said. "That is why we came prepared to oblige." The battle lasted 6 hours. The Krath fought with everything they had. They were fierce warriors who did not know the meaning of fear. But the humans and their allies were fighting for something more than victory. They were fighting for justice. They were fighting for freedom. They were fighting to ensure that what happened on New Busan would never happen again. When it was over, Krath fleet was destroyed. Their orbital defenses were dismantled. Their government collapsed. Supreme Commander Voth died on his command ship, still refusing to surrender. But humanity did not destroy the Krath homeworld. They could have. They had the weapons. They had the justification. After everything the Krath had done, no one would have blamed them. But Admiral Tay remembered something that Sergeant Wan had once told him. "We fight until the threat is gone, not until the enemy is dead. There is a difference." The war was over. The threat was gone. Now, it was time for something else. Justice. The war ended. But the work was not finished. Humanity could have wiped out the Krath, every other species in the galaxy. After the massacres and the slavery and the prison camps, revenge seemed like the natural response. The Krath had shown no mercy. Why should humans be any different? But humans surprised everyone, including themselves. A tribunal was established on the neutral world of Varus Prime, in the same great hall where the Kelvari elders had given their warning 1 year earlier. Krath war criminals were brought before judges from 12 different species. They were given lawyers. They were given the chance to defend themselves. Every accusation was carefully examined. Every piece of evidence was reviewed. This was not revenge. This was justice. Supreme Commander Voth was dead, but many of his officers had survived. They were tried for their crimes. Those who had ordered massacres were executed. Those who had run the prison camps were sentenced to life imprisonment. Those who had simply followed orders were given lesser punishments. The ordinary craft people, the farmers and workers and families who had never held a weapon, were left alone. They were told that the Dominion was dissolved. They were told that their military would be dismantled and their empire would be supervised by the galactic community for the next century. But they would live. They would have the chance to rebuild their society in a better way. Many species were confused by this. Mercy was weakness, was it not? If you had the power to destroy your enemy, why would you not use it? The Kelvari elders understood. They appeared at the post-war council session just as they had appeared before the war began. The great hall fell silent as the ancient beings of light and crystal took their place at the center of the chamber. "Now you understand why we warned you," the eldest of them said. "You thought we feared the humans because they were violent. You were wrong. We feared them because they are just." The elder paused and let those words sink in. Violence is easy to predict. A violent species will attack when it is strong and hide when it is weak. You can plan for violence. You can defend against it. But justice is different. Justice waits. Justice plans. Justice does not stop until the wrong has been made right. The elder turned its crystal head toward the human section. Ambassador Yuna sat there, calm and composed, just as she had been a year ago. But now everyone looked at her differently. Now everyone understood what that smile meant. The humans did not destroy the Krath because extinction was never their goal, the elder continued. They wanted to end the threat. They wanted to free the enslaved. They wanted to ensure that no one would suffer as New Busan suffered, and they achieved all of these things. The Krath people still exist. Their children will grow up in a galaxy where the Dominion is just a dark memory. This is mercy. The elder paused again. But understand this clearly. Had the Krath killed those prisoners instead of allowing their rescue, humanity would have burned their world to ash. Every city, every village, every last settlement, not from hatred, not from rage, from the cold calculation that such an enemy could never be allowed to exist. That is what makes humans terrifying. They can be reasoned with. They can be negotiated with. They can even be befriended. But only if you have not crossed certain lines. Elder looked around the chamber at all the assembled species. You never know exactly where those lines are. Until you have crossed them, long silence followed. Then Ambassador Yuna stood up and walked to the speaking platform. A year ago, she had been a minor diplomat from a minor species. Now she was the Secretary General of Human External Affairs. The galaxy had learned to pay attention when she spoke. The Kelvari Elder speaks the truth, Yuna said. Humanity came to the stars hoping to find friends. We came looking for trade partners and allies and fellow explorers. We did not want war. We never want war. War is expensive and bloody and terrible for everyone involved. She paused and looked around the chamber. But we learned long ago that wanting peace is not enough. Sometimes peace has to be defended. Sometimes the people who want to hurt others have to be stopped. And when that happens, when all other options have failed, humans do not hesitate. Her voice was calm and steady, almost gentle. We remember those who help us. 17 species stood with us against the Dominion. They will always have our friendship and our protection. We do not forget kindness. Then her voice grew slightly colder, though her smile never wavered. And we remember those who hurt us. We remember the names of every person who died on New Busan. We remember the faces of every child who lost a parent in the prison camps. We remember, and we make sure it never happens again. She looked directly at the representatives of species who had laughed at the Kelvari warning a year ago. They did not laugh now. Humanity wants peace, she said again. We always have. So please, let us be friends. Trade with us. Work with us. Explore the universe with us. We have so much to offer each other." Then she smiled that smile. The one that had confused Supreme Commander Voth. The one that had worried the Calvary elders. "But remember New Busan. Remember what happened to those who thought we were weak. And remember that somewhere in the archives of every human world, there is a record of everything that was done and everyone who did it. We never throw those records away." She bowed politely to the assembly. "Thank you for listening. We look forward to a bright future together." As she returned to her seat, the great hall remained silent. But this was not the uncomfortable silence of confusion. This was the respectful silence of understanding. The galaxy had learned what the Calvary elders had known for centuries. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest or the most advanced. They lived short lives and had soft bodies and felt emotions that made them do illogical things. But they never gave up. They never forgot. And when they decided something was worth protecting, they would chase you across the galaxy and through generations until the threat was gone. "Captain." Seok watched the broadcast from his hospital room on Earth. He was recovering slowly, but the doctors said he would walk again soon. Beside him sat Hannah, the medic who had fought beside him on New Busan. She had lost an arm in the war, but she was already learning to use a prosthetic. "Do you think they understand now?" Hannah asked. Seok thought about it for a moment. Then he smiled. "They understand enough," he said, "and that is a good start." Outside the window, the sun was setting over a peaceful Earth. Children played in the streets. Farmers worked their fields. Life went on as it always did. But in military academies across human space, young officers studied the Battle of New Busan. They learned the names, the 200 soldiers who had held the line against impossible odds. They visited memorials and read the records and promised to never forget, because that was what humans did. They remembered,